Greetings and Talapalava. We welcome you to another session of Talanoa. We'd like to thank you for allowing us to enter into your home through this virtual feed.
As many of you know, Talanoa is a Pacifica cultural method that means to have dialogue. When broken down, the word tala means story and the word noa means to tie. It is through Talanoa that we look to tie our stories together in order to have a clear understanding about topics that impact our cutie pie as well as the greater queer, trans, black, indigenous, and people of color community.
Before we begin, Utopia Washington continues to recognize that we as diasporic indigenous people pull resources and reside on the ancestral lands of the Coast Salish people, the Duwamish, Muckleshoot, and Puyallup tribes.
It is important to understand the long-standing history that has brought us and other settlers, colonizers, and indigenous peoples to reside on these lands, and to seek an analysis and continue understanding of our place within that history and present being.
Land recognition does not reside in the past tense or historical context. Colonialism is an ongoing weapon, and we need to find ways to build mindfulness of our present participation and how to truly stand in solidarity with First Nations people and how to support their health, their growth, and self-governance.
Indigenous First Nations peoples are still here, and we continue to thank them for their contributions.
We are honored by your presence this evening. Afio Maya, Talamaya.
Welcome to Talanoa.
Who's having tea. Um, my name is Tony Tupufia, and my pronouns are she, her, and hers. I serve as a food sovereignty program manager here at Utopia, Washington. And we've been serving our communities through our direct services like home delivery through DoorDash in partnership with DoorDash. Also, our food pantry, we call that Makeki, which is Samoan term for markets where we store our perishable and non-perishable food for our community to come access and pick food that are culturally relevant to their home. And also we have our Fatoanga, our farm, where we plant organic produce. And when we harvest those, we provide those fresh produce to our community for free. Um, so I'm going to talk more about today's, which is a special day for our food sovereignty. The International Food Sovereignty Day, celebrated on October 16th each year, is an important occasion to acknowledge and celebrate the contributions of smallholder and peasant farmers who play a significant role in ensuring global food security. These individuals continue to provide over 70% of the world's food supply, even as they confront numerous challenges that threaten their livelihoods and the global food system. These challenges include climate change. Smallholder and peasant farmers are particularly vulnerable to the impacts of climate change, such as extreme weather events, droughts, floods, and changing growing seasons. They often lack the resources and infrastructure to adapt to these challenges. Second challenges is inequitable trade agreements. Trade agreements can sometimes be unfavorable to small farmers as they may not have the same resources or parking power as large agribusinesses. Unfair trade practices can also undermine local food systems and farmers' ability to sell their products at their fair prices. The third one is land grabs. Land grabbing, where large corporations or foreign entities acquire large tracts of land, can displace small farmers from their traditional lands. This threatens food security, local livelihoods, and traditional agricultural practices. Financialization, the financialization of the food system involves the use of financial instruments and speculation on food commodities. This can lead to price volatility and impact of food access and affordability of consumers, as well as farmers' income stability. Corporate control, the concentration of power and control in the hands of a few large agribusinesses, can limit the choices and autonomy of small farmers. It can also lead to practices that prioritize profit over sustainable and equitable food production. International Food Sovereignty Day serves as a reminder of the importance of addressing these challenges and promoting a more sustainable, equitable, and resilient food system. It also emphasizes the need to support and empower small scale farmers, respect their rights, and recognize their role in feeding the world. This day encourages global cooperation and advocacy for policies that promotes food sovereignty, which means the rights of people to define their own food systems and have access to safe, nutritious, and culturally appropriate food. Our call for our tunnel tonight. By the end of this tunnel session, we hope our community will gain some understanding on what food sovereignty is, who food sovereignty serves, how food sovereignty helps our communities, why food sovereignty plays a vital role in our ecosystem, and what ways or actions that need to be done to strengthen food sovereignty. For now, I want to welcome our lovely panelists tonight who work in different areas of food sovereignty in serving our diverse communities. Welcome, our panelists.
Hello, my name
Um,
is Amanda, and I am a small farmer with a group called Kizama here in Washington State, and I'm part of 4 women that farm, and we've been farming for the past 3 years together.
okay, for our introduction, please, can you tell your name, your pronouns, and your bio, and also we have some icebreaker question. I apologize for that. So our icebreaker question to start our tunnel session tonight is: if you were a fruit or a vegetable, what and why?
I would probably be a mango because mangoes, you can make juice, you can make desserts, you can dry it, and you can eat it fresh, you can eat it raw. You can make chutney, you can make jam, and mango is my favorite fruit. So, and it's also it's usually very drought resistant. So it's a very resilient fruit. So I think that's what I'll be. I'll be a mango.
Thank you. We pass it over to Chichi.
Yeah, can you hear me okay?
Yeah, loud and clear.
Perfect. So, hi everyone. My name is Gigi. I go by she or they, and I thought about this question and I came up with I would be a mushroom, which I am considering a fruit because it is a fruiting body, and like a mushroom, I love to kind of work underground, behind the scenes, connected to community, in a really like beautiful symbiotic relationship. And I really pop up when the rains come and there's challenges. Conditions get hard. You'll see me pop up.
Thank you so much, Chichi, for that wonderful introductions and a mushroom. Also, this time, can we pass it over to Tanti? Do you want to
Hi,
go
my name
introduction?
is Tandy. I farm at Hot Snake Farm. If I were a fruit, I'd like to be a pineapple, hard on the outside, nice, sweet, and juicy in the inside. And pineapples have also nice properties, antioxidants, and some say they help with some diseases like arthritis. I eat a lot of pineapple, so I like to be a pineapple. Thank you.
Thank you, Santi. Welcome, Rosie. It's time for introduction. If you want to introduce yourself, your pronouns, some if you want to talk about a little background about you, and also our icebreaker question is: if you were a fruit or a vegetable, what and why?
Bulavinaka, everybody. My name is Rossi. I serve at the Pacific Islander Community Association of Washington as the uh, Pacifica Food Network's manager. Um, Pronouns are she, her, hers. My icebreaker question, I thought about this one, but Dandy, you totally took my answer away from me. But mine was the watermelon, hard on the
Ah,
outside and soft and juicy on the inside. so, so yeah, that was my answer. But she took the answers right out of my mouth.
okay. Thank you all for those wonderful answers. Well, Rosie, you took my answer. Yeah. If I were a fruit, I would choose watermelon. The reason why is um, when we start our farming this year, so we grew some squash, watermelons, and variety of crops. And when during our harvest, we receive a lot of great feedbacks from the farmers at Horseneck, and like they were asking a lot of questions. So like, wait, how did you grow? How
Mm,
how did you grow watermelons when we were trying so hard
yeah.
to grow watermelons? And look at you are harvesting those watermelons. And then I was like, oh, I just transplant this, grow the seed, then transplant, and then just let the land deal with it. Yeah. Thank you all. Right now, we're going straight into our discussion and sharing your great thoughts about some of the challenges and topics regarding food sovereignty. Our first questions for tonight to open our discussion is: can you explain what does food sovereignty mean to you, and how does it relate to your work or role in the community? What does food sovereignty mean to you, and how does it relate to your work or role in the community? Can we start with Amanda, Miss Amanda?
Yes. That's a wonderful question, and I think that's a question that I think needs to be asked to a lot of small scale farmers. And for me personally, I think that growing culturally relevant foods is really important for the health of people because that's what they're accustomed to eating. That's what has kept them healthy. And having accessibility to those foods also um, helps people stay healthy, basically. And it's important that there's access for everyone. I think it's a human right to have access to food. And when there's no access to food, there's no healing. People get sick, people get depressed. So there's a lot of things that happen. And so food sovereignty is important and it should be a global discussion. considering small scale farmers feed 70% of the population globally.
Hmm, interesting. Any thoughts, Rosie?
I'm gonna have to agree with Andy. I mean, sorry, Amanda. Excuse me. Food sovereignty to me basically means that people everywhere, no matter what circumstances you are in, have the right to access food. Like it's a basic right for everybody. So when I took up this job, when I became lead for the Pacifica Food Networks at PICOA, that was something that was very interesting for me to learn because throughout COVID, we would ask people, how many people are in your family, and then after they gave us that answer, and then we would give them a box. It didn't seem right to me. There were families with 7, 8, 9, and we're giving them one box per family. How are they going to survive on that one box? So for me personally, when I hear food sovereignty, it's just a right for everybody to be able to have food.
Uh, Dante?
Yes, thank you. I have to agree with both of these ladies. Food sovereignty is actually that you grow and supply culturally relevant food. Um, Sometimes you get, of course, you get food. You get like a box of food, and then you open in there. Some of them have canned foods, canned beans, canned that. But when you get to grow your own food and the food that the people in the community really recognize and like Amanda says, we always say water is life, but food is life too. So we have to feed the community. We have to feed them with the food that they are familiar with. That's why we grow the food that we grow. Like at Hosney Farm, where we farm, we grow that kind of food, culturally relevant. Thank you.
Any thoughts, Chichi?
Yeah. I mean, we hear the terms food access, food sovereignty, food, all these different kinds of things, and a lot of times we lump them together as one idea and one term. To me, I see, having worked in this industry and having worked in nonprofit for so many years, they're different. Food access, it's giving people the access to food. Food sovereignty, to me, and I think in there's more of a movement now about giving people control over their access and control over their food, and dignity of choice when it comes to needing food benefits or going to a food bank. Whereas access is, we're open, you get the box, like Rosie was saying, and like we see that model replicated. You get the box and maybe you don't choose what goes in it. But you have these, when you speak about food sovereignty, it's really about the control and the dignity to take the means of our food production back, and attach it back to culture and heritage, and work with small farmers. And so I see them as two different things, but I think those are all good conversations that we'll probably dive into tonight. So I'm excited.
Mm-hmm. Thank you, Chichi. Yeah, thank you for bringing all those terms up. Sometimes you will hear about food justice, and people ask like, "Oh, what's food sovereignty? Is food sovereignty also food justice, or they are separate?" So sometimes my response to that is that food sovereignty and food justice, they correlated together and they work together. Food sovereignty is giving the right to the producer, to the people, to the farmers, to grow the food that they know it's relevant for their health, and like and also um, they have the rights of how those crops and harvest or fresh produce can be processed or cooked in the way that they know it's not only healthy but it'll give them nutrient supplies, which also help them spiritually, and also if we eat healthy and we know that it's the food that we like that we're eating. It will also give us mentally stability and also healthy mind. Um, yeah, and food justice is also there to help control the productions and the cycle of food sovereignty, like not like it helps to you know um, help with our ecosystems, the environment, not to overfarm, and it will cause destructions to the environment. But thank you so much for all those wonderful thoughts that you share. We can move on to our second questions. So this question is for the farmers, as we have our Kisama farmers um, joining us here. So for the farmers, how do you grow food sustainably and locally, and why is this important for food sovereignty?
Um, we are at Kizama Farm and as Horseneck Farm. We are practicing organic farming. That means no chemicals and no pesticides of any kind. Everything that we use on the farm is organic, and we use compost. We are also trying to limit how much we till the land in order not to disturb the land too much, because in previous years the farm was used by a commercial farmer, so the land was tilled to a point where the soil was damaged. Um, there's no life in the soil. So the past year we've been trying to build the soil, and believe it or not, a worm was seen in the farm in the ground. That's a good thing. It means the soil is getting better and something is growing in there. We also would like to practice farm to table, and eventually and possibly farm to school, because it's a very healthy and sustainable way to have food, and healthy food, and also reduce footprint. If we supply to the local schools, the nearest schools to the farms, it means the kids are getting the freshest produce closest to their schools. The community is getting fresh produce closest to their homes. We've had customers walk to the farms and enjoy the walk to the farm, by the way, and enjoy buying their produce. And some have taken part in harvesting their own produce, which for them, they all say it's very calming, it's very healing. So I think the conversation of farming should be held in all communities and taught to our young people that it's important to know where your food comes from, and it's important to know that you're having healthy food. Thank you.
Amanda, you mentioned that you are farming with no chemical or no pesticide.
Yes.
Um, is there a reason why um, you call on farming without chemicals to control the weed and pesticides?
Yes. Pesticides are not healthy for anyone. Basically, the that part of the spelling of side means killing. So anything that kills the environment is not good for the human or the animals. We may put something on the ground that's okay for us, but not okay for the deer, not okay for the bunnies, not okay for the worms. And eventually the soil will not be okay for us. We are slowly killing Mother Earth. She's having a hard time sustaining us. And so we must do our part in preserving the ecosystem and do our best not to put any more chemicals into the ground. Is it easy? Absolutely not. Organic farming is the hardest and most humbling thing you can do because pests love anything you grow and you will struggle. But I think the overall health is more important, and knowing that I'm growing something healthy and something I'm proud to give to another person and say this was organically grown, no chemicals were placed in this plant, and I'm ensuring that I'm giving a healthy product and a product that I'm happy with.
So if we are not using chemical or pesticides, so what are the ways that you use um, in order to keep your farm organic to make sure that these are chemical and pesticides friendly?
You can trim. You can trim your crops, especially like tomatoes. Tomatoes are very susceptible to pests, and a lot of the greens are very susceptible to pests. You can cover them with a screen. The vegetables, you can cover them with a screen. You can put ground cover. Same with cucumbers and most of these other peppers. You can put ground cover. That helps. That does not mean you're not going to get pests. It just means you are reducing the amount of pests you get. And keeping your field clean helps. So we know that cleanliness is next to godliness, right? Even on the farm, you have to be clean.
Thank you. Chichi, I also know that you also love to farm. How do you grow food sustainably and locally? And why is this important for food sovereignty?
Yeah, growing food locally, it comes with some extra challenges in our region. For anyone out there who doesn't know, I encourage you to research the Tacoma smelter plume. This is an area of around Tacoma and around South Seattle, South King County, Pierce County that was really affected by the Tacoma smelter plants. It left a lot of toxins in the environment, in the ground, and water. So we do have our unique challenges here. Something I do grow in my own yard, and always getting a soil test to me is really important. You can get a free soil test through KCD. You just dig up a couple pounds of dirt and they'll test it for you, and you can kind of see what toxins you might have in your land and in your soil. There are ways to mitigate those. I mean, it's kind of hard where we live, and I think at some point we just have to accept that we're probably eating a little tiny bit of lead if we're growing things in our garden. But you can plant things like greens for the first year that you're growing, and then not eat the greens, but dispose of them. Brassicas, so like kales, really pull a lot of toxins from the soil. So you could do an entire year where you're just growing plants that help neutralize soil. Clover's a really good one. And we kind of worked on that this year, my wife and I, just planting things that we probably knew we were going to eat. It's really sad to throw it out, but knowing that next year we've really helped cleanse the soil a bit. And yeah, I forgot what the other part of the question was. I started thinking about the Tacoma smelter plume, and that's like a whole other topic. But yeah.
Sandy, any?
Yeah, just to add a little bit, at the farm, when we get customers, sometimes we have to educate them too. They come and you sell them a leaf that has holes in it, and they're like, they don't want it. And we have to teach them that's why that leaf is healthy. If it was didn't have any holes, that means even the little insects or the animals that go in the come out of the soil, they don't want to touch it, so it's not good for you. So don't worry about the little holes that are there. It's because it is healthy. So we also have to educate our customers.
Mm-hmm.
Um, the compost that we use a lot of, and then a lot of water, that also helps the soil a lot. Amanda was just talking about we saw a worm. It's like something, why just a worm? Because the 2 years that we farmed there were no worms. We couldn't find a worm when we dug underneath because it had been messed up by chemicals, a lot of chemicals, the artificial fertilizers and the insecticides and everything. So now that we are adding compost, and we have done that for maybe the third year, we are now beginning to see life coming into the soil, which is a good thing. So that worm she's talking about, we're all excited. Oh, so there's life. Our life is coming back in the soil. So we also need to do all that. Yeah.
I think like knowing the difference between there's like pests, there's insects and creatures all over. We have beneficial insects. We have ones that are, truly terrible for, let's say, brassicas get like a lot of white flies. So there's very specific pests that will come after very specific things. For the home grower, anyone growing on your own, there's a lot of information out there. Plants aren't all the same. Just kind of knowing your land, knowing what you're growing, and knowing that like if you see a worm, that's a great thing. I mean, we want to see worms, we want to see butterflies and bees and wasps even. There are a lot of really beneficial insects out there, and knowing the creatures that you're working with. I mean, you're working together, right? They're sometimes like a mole. You're not working with a mole. The mole is is here to stay, but it's kind of a pest in the garden. There are a lot of really humane and organic and wonderful ways. We talk about integrated pest management, ways to work with the earth and with nature and with the soil and with the worms. And I think we love worms here. There are a lot of good ways, but there's a lot of information. So if you're out there and you're growing and you're feeling frustrated, I see all these bugs and spiders, and it's a good thing. It's a really good thing, and just knowing how to work together with the things that are here will definitely improve the soil, improve the earth, and our mental health. Worms are friends.
Yeah, thank you for bringing that up.
Yeah.
Because I think that's one cause of a lot of food waste. Um, when businesses and warehouses receive those pallets of especially the fresh produce, and whenever they find one pack i- in the whole contain in the whole pallet, they will reject that. And it's so sad that these fresh produce, these are hard work that the farmers were trying to produce, and now they're all going to waste for all this hard work for months, from growing to taking care of and to harvest, and for just one pack. But those packs are a part of the ecosystems. They're always there to help with the ecosystems and help the fresh produce, the crops to grow. I think that's one major issues of having a lot of food waste. Maybe I don't know. Maybe is there a chance um, to retouch that? Not taking those fresh produce to waste, but look for other ways um, in order for communities to use, because that one pack, the whole pallet would be rejected, and it's for the health concern of the public. Mm, well, maybe it's something to think about. What are your thoughts on that? Um, Rosie, you can also chime in.
Thanks, Tony. I just feel like we're so far removed, like we have to be educated again on that little hole on that lettuce doesn't mean it's totally bad, right? Or that little I'm just every time I'm hearing you guys talk, it reminds me of the children nowadays when they see a little worm. It's like, ew, gross. They start squealing, and it's like everything is going to you know what I'm talking about. but we have, like, it just reminds me we have a long ways to work. We got a lot of work to do in order to get everybody back to the point where they understand that we are living, these are friends. They are not exactly bad for the food. They actually make the food healthier, if or they let you know that the food is good because they're eating it. So just a lot of education, and I feel like we're all starting from ground zero again. But if we constantly we continue to do the work, I feel like more people will come together. And man, I'm already learning so much from these ladies and the farming of the land. It's amazing. So yeah, let's keep this going.
Yeah. Anyone wants to add in?
Yeah, I think we're a very wasteful generation. We are incredibly wasteful. And to think that the conversation of famine is only for third world countries is absolutely sad and wrong, because I think hunger is a global issue. And we forget that even in the great America, there are people who struggle with not having enough food or any food at all. So the conversation really should change, and the perception of people should change. I personally experienced going to Costco, and they had a few rotten onions in a pallet. They were getting rid of an entire pallet. Now, had Costco had, I know they're scared of being sued, but I think they should contact agencies like Utopia and say, we have a pallet of onions we're trying to get rid of. I will gladly go pick it up on behalf of Utopia, come and cut all those onions and freeze it, and we make soup or we make stir fries and feed people. I think that conversation needs to change. Nobody's going to sue you because you gave us a bunch of rotten onions. And looking for the perfect vegetable, there is no perfect vegetable. You can't find the perfect carrot, you can't find the perfect potato. That's not natural. And so this thing of going into the store and saying the carrot is not straight enough or the potato is not straight enough needs to stop. That's not real. Real food comes in all sizes and forms. That's the way it was designed. And that's the healthy stuff. And I think that really needs to get back into the community, because every time somebody sees a hole, oh, it's not nice. It's not. No. And I also blame agencies that don't encourage washing vegetables and washing meat. Come on. The reason why you're not washing your vegetables because you think the store did the job for you. You will find stuff in there, especially if it was grown organically. You will find stuff. So do your part, wash your vegetables.
Thank you, Amanda, for that. For the farmers, since we live in Washington State, and we have seasons, like 4 different seasons, like what are kind of crops that is good for summer, and also it's good for winter, or what kind of crops that you can grow um, during the summer and for winter, in order to make sure that we still have a sustainable um, supply of fresh produce.
Okay, thanks. Um, for the summer, we usually grow all the kales, the cabbages, the tomatoes, um, carrots, beans, all kinds of beans, and then corn. During the winter, there are some kales that will survive the winter. The kales, and we have some chard, Swiss chard, garlic. All those will also survive the winter. So right now we are preparing so that we can still have something in the winter to so that the community can also benefit. We don't want to have a like a dry winter sort of with no vegetables or something, but we can still grow. And apart from that, I think we can also do some radishes. Um, yeah, there's a list that I don't have, but there are quite a few that we can still grow that we can be able to supply to customers or the food bank.
Hmm,
Yeah.
interesting. That's good to know. Any thoughts, Chichi?
On what we should grow by season. Yeah, I think something that when people start growing their own food, I think something that I've heard of a lot, I've seen a lot of people do is they go to Lowe's or they go somewhere and they're like, I love peppers, I love carrots, I love onions, and they buy all of the starts and all of the things at the same time, and they come home and they put it in the ground. Um, but like I said before, plants are different. You know, they're like people. They have their own desires, and they
Yeah.
love different kinds of food and warmth and different kinds of environment. So I think people do that and then get really discouraged because it's not going to work. And there's a really good resource called gardening. I think it's called Gardening in the Maritime Northwest, and it's a Tilth Alliance book. It's really great because we have to look at like the kind of zone that we're in, the kind of climate that we're in, and that's a really excellent resource. So gardening in the Maritime Northwest, I believe it's called, but it's through Tilth, the Tilth Alliance, and what they do is they go through and they break down, month by month. So in May you should be starting these, and you should be putting these in the ground, and in June you can put these in the ground, and just I mean, again, it's, like Rosie was saying, we're so disconnected from the earth and from the bugs and the plants and but really understanding that they're living and they have needs, and you can really nurture and have a relationship with your garden and your plants, and it's really fun to like go out and be like, I know that my tomatoes have a little end rot on them, so they need a little extra calcium, because you're like a mother and you go out and you give them some calcium and then you watch them come back, but really knowing the season and what you're putting in the ground will really help, I think, bring confidence to people. And there's a lot of really good resources out there. Just make sure that you're like, planting in your season, and that you've given yourself a lot of time, and that that gardening comes with failure too. And sometimes something happens and something dies, and you're like, I nurtured this thing from a little baby and then it died. There's a lot of sadness and a lot of joy in gardening. And it's just kind of accepting the balance of those things, and just educating and knowing that there's a lot of support out there, and do everything in the right time, I think, is a good expression for gardening, patience and all that. So just check the calendar and make sure that you're putting something in the ground at the right time and giving it a good head start in life.
Yeah. So I've been thinking of when I attended some of the conference and coalition. There was questions that's always brought up, like because we are a diverse community with a diverse culture. Um, like a lot of the the culturally relevant food for our culture, we can hardly find those here in the US, and it's hard to and even if we have those supplies, they will be in high cost, like very expensive, and a lot of our communities can't afford that. What do you think then? Um, some thought like it's better to introduce um, culturally relevant crops here in the US. It's so contradicting because um, those we call some say those are invasive plants and crops, and we are trying to introduce into a soil that wasn't familiarize with these crops that we're bringing in to grow into our farm. Um, I think there's a like open on the floor for discussions. Like, what are your thoughts on that? Like, do you um, support of growing the food back home here, or do you prefer buying those from the stores?
I think I can take this one. I For us Pacific Islanders, I know something that we really like to eat is taro, and it's a root crop. But living here in the Pacific Northwest, it's almost I've never heard of anyone growing taro here that has survived the weather conditions, right? And so I've heard ideas like. Maybe we should put it in a greenhouse. Maybe we should, maybe we should try a different variety of the crop. There's all these ideas that come up, but for it to be done, I don't know if I've ever heard of anybody. So I think the next best thing for me would be, in order for my community to be able to have access to culturally appropriate food, there should, we should be given some kind of vouchers that we can go to the stores and buy our own food, right? Since we can't plant it here, we have to be able, because like Tony said, they're super expensive. Taro is expensive to buy, so if we were I remember we were at an open house with one of the big agencies, Northwest Harvest, and they were asking us, "What do you want to see? What do you want to see?" And all I said was, "I need culturally appropriate food for my community, because in order for my community to be healthy, we like our kind of food. We are now being forced to eat something that we never grew up on. We didn't grow up on these kind of foods that we're now eating, And so there was ideas thrown like maybe we could get access to, I think it was the farm to table kind of, but with a voucher thingy, right? But then still you won't be able to, but they were talking about us going to grocery stores that sold those kind of foods that we ate, and be able to use that voucher there. So that's one of the ways I think we can help our community. um, Unless any of you farmers know a good way to grow taro, please let me know.
Any thoughts from Kasama crew?
I don't know what taro is.
You don't know what taro is? I haven't had taro. Maybe I have, but I know what it is. I always think taro is like potato, but different. And I know that it takes a while to grow. I do believe that if our local government could get involved in knowing what the people in the community like, I think at some point they would invest in a high tunnel and say, let's give this a try and see what happens. I think that taro can grow in a greenhouse, and I think it can thrive and it can survive. Correct me if I'm wrong, but Pacific Islanders have a problem with diabetes. That's because they're not eating the foods they should be eating. They're not eating the healthy food. Speaking of my own country, Zambia, we have a problem of diabetes. Diabetes never used to be a problem. Zambia has probably the largest numbers in cancer. That never used to be an issue. There's no reason we should be on the map for cancer in the world. There's no reason. But in recent years, a lot of things have changed. The ecosystem has changed. We've brought in a lot of pesticides. We've moved away thinking that farming with GMOs is easier and faster. And it's killing our soil. It's killing our people. So I think there should be an investment in our local government to its people, because unhealthy people are costly. I know that. So I really think that they should invest in the people in the community and try and invest in growing foods that are culturally relevant and see what a great change that can be. And involving the people in growing their own food is a good way to get people to appreciate their food and where their food is coming from.
Yeah. Yeah. Thank you, Amanda, for that. And also to add on, that is why today is a day that is we celebrate food sovereignty. Um, that people can voice their rights, and also to celebrate our indigenous people, our ancestors who fought along the road in order to, you know, to bring that rights back to the community. Um, so that way, it's a good thought that maybe they will also put some like support bills and also policies um, to help encourage organic farming. So that way, because you're right, Amanda, using too much pesticides and also fertilizers, that will also and also during the process of, sometimes I've seen some of videos of how the chicken being processed that they inject with a lot of water and to make them look round, and then it will give the false impression to the community that the round chicken is the good chicken to eat. But no, if we have, well, back home we have chicken farm, and I've never seen around those big round chicken like that. Well, it's like
We
we're
run
keeping
after our
false.
chickens.
Yeah, we're keeping a false advertisement, like not us, but the P Corps and governments. Like this is healthy and that, but yeah, that's a really good thoughts, Amanda. Thank you for sharing. I'm Chichi. Like any thoughts on this question?
Yeah, and sorry, my internet died. They're doing some work.
No, you're
Comcast is doing
fine.
some work, but I'm back. So I heard a little bit at the tail end of that, around chickens and all that, but it kind of goes back to what Amanda was talking about. You go to the store and you find a carrot that's not perfectly straight or not perfectly anything, and you'll hear this more from me. And if you know me, you know that I'm pretty anti-capitalist and pro people, and a lot of that is like a very capitalist construct that we've built. We've built this idea that everything should look perfect, and that those come from corporations that are saying, Safeway and all these big growers that are, it's only through them that we can get the most beautiful and the most perfect and the most healthy. That chicken is not healthy. That fat chicken is not healthy. Those, any of the pesticides that they're using to grow that perfect carrot are not healthy. But it's propaganda. I mean, we're fed this forever. And it's so insidious, and we don't realize that these are the messages that we're getting, that food has to look this way. And who's selling that food? It's big growers and, big corporate farmers and, corporate, I don't know, chicken owners. I don't know what you call them, but like Tyson and all those. But it's false. It's fake. They're real, but they're not the standard. And we're afraid to kind of break out of that. And we think that if, like Tandy said, if the kale has a hole on it or the lettuce has a little ladybug in it, that you throw it out. And I mean, we can, food waste is a huge issue, in composting and all that, and people are afraid of it, but they're afraid of things that don't look like that kind of box that we've been, the model that we've been built to see. And so it does take a lot of education. Rosie was saying it's really about educating to people, educating people and getting them back in that, to have that relationship with land and with food, and to see that my carrots, Amanda, Tandy, they saw pictures of my carrots this summer. They were the weirdest looking carrots you've ever seen. I could spell my name with my carrots. They were so curly. And they were they were delicious. They're amazing. No one would have bought those if I took them to like a farmer's market or anything. But it's a lot of just like breaking out of that. What have we been given? What are the images we've been given? What is the standard we've been taught to see as good and healthy, and breaking out of that. And that's the future. That we can't do that alone, but that's why we have these conversations and help educate each other and our families and everyone.
Yeah, thank you, Gigi.
Sorry.
No?
I'm just gonna go off of what Gigi was saying as well. I have a little story. I took my children to Fiji like about 2017, I think. And I remember my daughter looked at the pineapple and the watermelon, and they were just so small. They were tiny, they weren't like the big ones they get here and they're like, oh my gosh, that's such a tiny, watermelon. And they took one bite of this watermelon and it was the sweetest, and the pineapple. And then they were like, so mom, why are the pineapples and the watermelons in America so big? I said, they're on steroids, guys.
Yes, they are.
They're on steroids, and that's not the way that we were raised, but that's what we're eating, what we're putting into our bodies, and yeah, that was just a little example when Gigi was talking that just kept coming into my head, of how we're, that's a third world country. We're growing food the right way, but then we think that America is growing food the right way.
Yeah.
No,
Thank you, Rosie. And also there's a following questions. Since you've been serving hundreds of different communities through your food distributions, your home delivery. So how do you ensure fair food distribution, especially in underserved communities, while respecting food sovereignty principles?
So, like I shared earlier, I've just been running this program for almost a year now. And ever since I did take over the program, it was we had to partner with churches, right? That because the churches were the ones that had members that they could give away boxes to. We started giving out 25 boxes per church that partnered with us. And when they did partner with us, we would ask them to at least give them 2 hours of their time, right? 2 hours of their time where they can come help us. So it was like a relationship we were building with each other, right? So they would come in, donate time, and then we would in return give them food boxes. So we reached out to the Marshallese community. We reached out to the Chukis community. We reached out to the Fijian community, the Samoan, Tongans, the community that are focused in South King County. And so I think we ran that where they were picking up their own food for a while. And then I think in 2021, towards the end of 2021 was when we partnered with DoorDash. We partnered with DoorDash to deliver boxes that we packed to our clients who sign up with DoorDash, right? And so the one thing that I know that I would do was to, I remember because we get random food from big agencies like Northwest Harvest or Food Lifeline. But the one thing I would try to tell the volunteers or anyone that was packing a box, make sure the box looks like it's that they can make a meal out of it, right? They could, like, if there was potatoes, enough potatoes for a meal, or for 2 weeks worth, if we were because also another thing we're facing right now is the shortage of food. Shortage of food is a real thing. for us to be able to pack into the boxes. And so whatever I get, I make sure that it's spread equally. I do partner with bigger agencies like Utopia Washington, and also APCC, who are always there to help us pack food and distribute the food. So I'm grateful to them because when they come, especially Tony, she will come and she'll say, "Hey, there's this meeting going on. Are you aware of this meeting?" So this relationship it just keeps on going. Let me put you on this meeting. Let me put you on this. So I'm just so grateful for the people that I've met doing this work, and also the churches that I've been able to partner with. Just I'm learning cultures that way. And it's just a beautiful thing. Yeah.
Anyone wants to add on? Okay. But I can share that out here at Utopia, Washington, we also do food distribution. We serve LGBTQIA plus communities. Those are one of the underserved communities. Um, so we created a survey so that we can look at the data. And, when we talk about LGBTQIA communities, we talk about the whole communities with different cultures, different races, and also different backgrounds. And then we try we try and research the food that are relevant to their culture, and then we try and connect with our food banks. As Rosie already mentioned, that a lot of the food from food banks are random, and it's really hard, especially our Pacifica, our Cutie Pie, our queer and trans Pacific Islanders um, people. It's really hard to find their culturally relevant food at food banks. But if you put in request, I know they say they don't have enough money or enough grants to purchase those food because they um, like very expensive because it's hard to find here in the U.S. Um, so we are not only distribute those food through our home delivery in partnership with DoorDash and United Way King County. But we make sure that those food boxes also include fresh produce and and also meat. But most of the time, we don't get meats from our food bank partners. That is sometimes we get, but most of the times we hardly get any meat. Yeah. Um, so we're trying to make sure that all those food distributions are fairly, and also we're respecting food sovereignty principles. Um, yeah, so we can move on to our next question is, how can governments and policymakers help food sovereignty efforts, and what rules or laws might need to change to support these principles? Um, Anyone wants to share on that?
I'll go. Again, our local government and our local representatives need to take a strong interest in the welfare of the community and the food that's available to us. Um, I applaud King County for the program they have at Horseneck Farm, and I think more programs like that should be available to people and encouraged, because people are happier. I mean, I've heard of people at Horseneck Farm who are struggling with depression and are doing so much better because they're outside and they're doing things they love, and they're proud when they see their crops grow. They're happy that they're also earning an income from their produce. Good example, Tony. Tony farmed this year and she killed it. And you could see the joy in her face when she comes to harvest those eggplants that are going on forever. Like she carries bucket loads every time she comes to the farm. And she's feeding her community, she's feeding her people, and she's figuring out recipes of how to cook eggplant because she has so much of it. And that is pride. That is pride that you're feeding your community, you're taking care of your community, and it gives you courage to do better and more next year. So, programs like Horseneck Farm should be available to people. They should be accessible in every county, and they should be talked about, and people should get involved. Because now we're getting sometimes even drive-bys where people say, "Hey, how did you start farming here?" And you say, "Well, go to King County." Yeah, like, you just apply. Yeah, you just apply. There is a fee, but you can apply. So yeah, people are interested. But I also was talking to Melissa, who mentioned that they're finding it hard to find land to buy in order to have more of these programs. So the money is there to buy the land. The land is just not available. And sometimes this is also due to contracts that the government made with commercial farmers years ago when they gave the land away in contracts for pennies. And they can't get out of those contracts. Meanwhile, people who really need the land are struggling. I mean, even we have a horrible drug addiction in the community. And sometimes what those people need is food. They just need a warm meal. It's getting cold now. They need that. And having a nice meal can give you hope and a feeling of home. So if our local people could get involved, our local representatives could start working for the people, I think that would be great.
Can I just add a little bit on what Amanda is saying? These people that we're talking about, they are our representatives. They need to know these stories. They need to be maybe invited to forums like this so they can hear for themselves. Maybe they'll hear about it, but not in detail, not with as how we are expressing ourselves. They need to hear these stories so that they can take it up when they are discussing these issues. We need that representation. We need these people to know. We need these people to be educated about their own communities. Maybe they go to represent us, but then they're not very sure who us is. We are different people in that us who need different solutions. So they need to be invited, they need to be educated in what we are talking about.
I'm just also going to add, like, instead of putting money into the pockets of the big corporations, like, how about you put it into your community, right? Put it back into the community where we can decide for ourselves what kind of food we want. You know, I feel like I don't know why they're still putting it into these big corporations, but that's another fight that we're willing to keep fighting, right?
Yeah, because isn't that what food sovereignty is about? It's about putting the community first. So, in order for that to be something we actually proudly discuss, we must put the community first.
Gigi, any thoughts on that?
Yeah, lots and lots. Soaking in what others are saying. You know, there's a lot of talk in in local government, state government, federal government, with grantors, people that give money. There's a lot of talk, and there's a lot of there's a lot of movement around like land back issues, land back, starting corporate meetings and starting city council meetings with land acknowledgements and all of these things. Where's the land? Hashtag land back, and then no one, where's it go? They're not actually giving any land back. It's a lot of talk. It's not a lot of action. And for people that have the ability to find and buy and give land, do it. For people that have the ability to go to city council meetings, I mean, go, show up, go together, tap into your local farm networks. I mean, a lot of this feels really hopeless when you start talking about it. It feels very, I mean, and in some ways it feels hopeless, but we can get there. Rosie is saying they have these, like, I think it was Rosie or Amanda saying they have these contracts with like growers. Something interesting about farming is that if you're signing a lease with someone for farming, you can have up to like a 99-year lease, or which is essentially a lease in perpetuity. And these are things that people don't really understand. They see these big plots of land like sitting empty. Why are they not, why is no one using this? This may be a lease that someone held 50 years ago that they don't want to turn over until it earns, $10 million for their family. So the city might hold it. It might be something that the city holds that they have plans for in 20 years. So we see a lot of talk, a lot of land back, kind of rhetoric, but it's not actually going anywhere. So, when you hear things, don't assume that it's even in these like, kind of progressive bubbles like Seattle. We hear a lot of this kind of rhetoric, and someone put in our little chat, performative. 100%. It's performative, and there's not a lot of action behind it. So when you see these things, don't just assume that something's being done. Really follow the money. When we elect someone, continue to follow them, check out their voting records. They're all public online. You can see politicians' voting records. You can see what budgets, what bills they're introducing. Follow the farming bills that come out, the big farm bill, the big federal farm bill. A lot of it's just we hear something and we assume that it's being done. It's not. So just make sure that you're staying educated. You're tapping in, to the local farmer community, and showing up. I mean, show up. If they have if city council is talking about something and no one's coming to like voice it, I mean, they're gonna do the bidding for whoever's probably paying them the most, or campaigning for them the hardest. And no one's really coming to help us except for ourselves in the end, and our communities. And when someone calls for us, we need to show up, and showing up is oftentimes free, if you have the time, access, and transportation. But showing up really is a huge way to make our voices known.
Well, thank you so much, Chichi, for sharing that. Those are all great ideas, great thoughts, and thank you all for sharing. That's the major issue here, is that the governments want people to eat healthy, but how are we going to eat healthy if there's no land access? It's so hard to access these lands. Like even if they provide those grants, those vouchers, but it's not sustainable. Now we see that it was during the pandemic that there are a lot of vouchers being distributed, but right now we never see those vouchers anymore. That's not sustainable for the community. But if we have easy access for land, we can grow our own food, and we can serve our community through the produce that we grow. And also, this is a very good, a great opportunity to teach our communities to the way that our ancestors and our forefathers used to live back home. Because when I just started, as Amanda mentioned, farming here is really different from farming back home. So Kisama Group was really help with our Utopia Fatuama, our farm. And they provide a lot of encouragements and motivations. And we, from someone who starting farm here, the first time farming, I see that, oh my gosh, like what happened if all these crops didn't survive, blah blah. But when it's harvest season, we've been harvesting and distributing all those harvests for free to the community. And it's a pride. It's a pride of joy. And you know, it's like inside of you, you achieve something. Like you achieve that big goal that you were aiming for. Um, Maybe if we push our community and especially the governments and the policymakers, um, to to make land access more easier for communities, so that way um, people will find that pride of joy when they farm. And it's also not only that, I think it's also great to partner with the health system. Um, they have the data of communities and a lot of diseases that different diverse communities have. Maybe that's something that it's good to present those data and also help with to push those bills and policies to the governments in order to get those land access, because those land are majority of those big lands are handling by big courts and also the governments. Is there any thoughts you want to share?
As we talk about the land issues, I think we should also talk about water, because in this country, we have something called water rights. And you can give somebody a piece of land. If there's no water, you can't do anything. Gigi knows a thing or two about this. You can talk about land. If there's no water, if there's no access to water, that land will sit there and nothing will happen to it. So the discussion of land must include the conversation of water. We must have water. Access to water is important. This year, I think, actually, it was the first year at Hosnick Farm. That's when I understood why people have war over things like water. I understood. The first year at Hosnick Farm was rough. We had no water. We literally, you would buy a case of water from Costco and you bring it to the farm to keep your plants alive.
Bottled water.
Bottled water. It was rough. I almost gave up. I don't know. It was by the grace of God that our crop survived that year, because of COVID, the irrigation system was in back order. So everybody was waiting for something. Everything was in back order. And by the time our things bloomed, we were just in awe of how these things had survived. And yeah, I appreciated water. So as we talk about land, let's talk about water too, and access to it. Because right now at Hosnick Farm, our access to water is very close.
Just a little fact for people as we go into this water conversation. I mean, we know that farming and all these things are inextricable from climate change. We know that the countries and the people that tend to lead the charge in changing and altering the climate are not the ones that end up suffering the consequences of it. Just a few numbers on planet Earth. We're made up of mostly water. Only 3% of the water on Earth is fresh water. 3%. So 97% of all the water on Earth is salt water. Can't use it for drinking. You can't use it for watering crops. You can't. It's not usable, right? So 3% is all we have of fresh water. Of that 3%, only 1.2% is accessible to us. So this is lakes, streams, groundwaters, anything else. The rest of it, what is that, 98.8% of freshwater is tied up in glaciers and, deep, and it's inaccessible. Um, that's not a lot of water that we have. And this is something that we're all really sharing as the most critical resource. And we can all change that, right? We all have the ability to consume less water, to be more conscious of the water that that's around us. There are organizations around us that do like rain catchment systems and all these things, being conscious of how much laundry we're doing or how long our showers are. And I know a lot of that comes down to like blaming the individual, which is also, that's also propaganda when they talk about, it's on you to recycle and save the planet. Or is it on, the giant corporations that are responsible for most of our carbon emissions? That all aside, but thinking about the little tiny bit of water that we have and how critical and how precious of a resource it is, we're doomed without water. I mean, that's just the long and short of it. We have to take care of what we have. We have to continue lobbying our governments and representatives that this is something that we don't want to think about it because it's really scary. But I mean, even the farmers, I'm sure, have seen in the last 10 years, people that live in the Pacific Northwest, that live in Seattle, you've seen the difference in the summer. Think about summer, winter 10 years ago and how much, snow and rain and all that we've gotten. And think about this last summer where we had historically low rainfall. It's critical for all of us. And water treatment, water runoff, all those things are so intrinsically tied to this. It's hard to talk about, but it's something that we need to figure this out together. And it's just, those numbers always blow me away. It's just,
Gigi might have just opened another can of worms for us to discuss another time. That is crazy. Back to worms.
I love worms.
Yeah, she sure did.
Oh, well, thank you so much, Gigi, and everyone. Our next question, and can you share a success story or example of how food sovereignty has positively impacted your community or organization? Can open it on the floor.
Okay. On my part or our part, I think the community has benefited a lot this season, specifically, because from last season, when we started farming, with the last 2 seasons, when we started farming together as 4 ladies, we didn't do as much as we did this year or the year before. We had customers come in wanting to buy vegetables, wanting to buy corn, and then we saw the magnitude of the demand, so that this season we increased our acreage for planting, and we had more people coming in to get the vegetables. They would specifically ask for the vegetables that they used to have at home. Find out if we're growing them. They'll ask, do you have this type of kale? Do you have pumpkin leaves? Do you have bean leaves? Do you have beans? Do you have all that? And by them asking, that encouraged us to grow more. And we have supplied a lot of that to the community. Even up to now, you tell them that when it starts raining, when it starts getting cold, the vegetables give up. The corn, because it's tropical corn, when it starts getting cold, it freezes, it stops growing. They don't understand that. They're still coming in, they still want fresh corn, they still want pumpkin leaves, they still want all these things. So we actually have sort of educated them that we can grow this food, which is culturally relevant, and they know where to get it. So they actually come and get it from the farm. So the community has really benefited, and we also have benefited financially as well, although a little bit, but we have. And we are just hoping that we'll do more next season, God willing. Yeah.
I also would like to add on to that. We have managed to bring in seeds from our individual countries. And the conversation I've heard quite a bit is people are scared to bring seeds because they're scared somebody at the immigration entry will take seeds away. So maybe having a waiver when you say I'm a farmer and I'm bringing these seeds into the country for the purpose of growing for my community, if we could be given that waiver, that would encourage people to bring seeds. Because that's been the conversation where people say, "Where did you get that?" And you say, "Oh, I got it from home." I say, "No, I'm scared to bring things because I've had problems with immigration." So, if maybe we could be permitted a waiver, that would be really nice. That would really be nice. And we've introduced quite a few vegetables this year, and we've also introduced them to people that would normally not have eaten our foods. Um, we've cooked, like this past week, we had an event at the farm, the first of many. Uh, Everybody cooked something. Gigi, you missed that. Everybody cooked something and brought it to the farm, and everybody shared. It was an amazing event. It was an event where nobody was complaining about irrigation, nobody was complaining about the road, nobody was complaining about the mud. Everybody was just enjoying food from different countries cooked differently. So that encouraged the farmers as well as the King County representatives to say this is an event we should have every year and not just once. They want to have it 3 times.
Wow.
So that's exciting, and it's good news. And talking about COVID, it's a funny story. During COVID, there was a problem with getting vegetables. So amaranth is a big part of our vegetable. And during COVID, it was almost like the Africans and the Pacific Islanders were fighting for the same vegetable. Amaranth. My sister went to the store one day and she wanted to get amaranth, and she got there and she came back so disappointed, and she goes, "The Samoans and their cousins came and took everything." So she came so sad. And I said, "Well, maybe next time we should go with the cousins too." So, it's those simple things. And amaranth is not hard to grow. It's a very resilient plant and it grows really fast. But during COVID, we were literally fighting for it.
Gosh.
So these are lessons we need to have, that even when there's a pandemic, we can still grow food. And also having greenhouses would help so that we're growing these foods year round. Amaranth, again, is a year round crop and very easy to grow. You can grow it several times a year. So simple things like those can make a difference in somebody's life on a daily basis.
Thank you, Amanda. Rosie?
So I don't think I can call it a success story because I'm still doing this work, and I'm still finding and learning new ways, to make this work better, right? So, but one of the things that make me happy is when a family walks in and they say they're strapped for they don't have any money to buy food. They don't have means to get food. and I'm able to walk into our food pantry at work and pack enough food for them to last till their next paycheck, right? That to me is always a heartwarming experience, and that will always be something that I'm proud that I'm able to do for my community. But I also want to know more ways that I can access food for my community, like ways that, like Tony was saying, to sustain us, not just easy fix band-aid that we put on today and then we take it off tomorrow, but something that will be sustainable for us. So yeah.
Gigi?
Yeah, and the question was around success in our work. I mean, I think just looking kind of holistically at the, food access, food sovereignty, I guess, system or area of work. I would say a very like global success is that I've seen, a lot more people really interested in learning to grow their own food, in joining programs like, so one of the programs I'm part of is through TILF, and it's called the Soil and Water Stewardship Program. And once a month I meet with 30 some other, people from all walks of life, and seeing so many people really like invested and really truly love, we go and we build garden beds, for different organizations and for schools, and just seeing people show up and have these conversations around food as growing food and food stewardship as a disruptor of capitalism has been really, really wonderful to just have these kinds of conversations more and more frequently. Having something like this event and having people just talk about it. This wasn't happening. I mean, I come from an agricultural town. I grew up in Wenatchee, and it was very good old boys, club. And now, now we're seeing, more queer people get involved in gardening, and, women and different marginalized communities that have been really shut out of these spaces. And man, that just never would have happened when I was growing up in that community. It wasn't a place for me. So seeing more of these kinds of conversations is just this, I think, a global success. And also with, a lot of food banks recently have been moving towards dignity centered models of having customers come in and do shopping, set up like a store, and they can come in and they can get their ingredients instead of the old model of like opening up, open it up and it's, cans, and which is those places have their times, and they've helped people in incredible ways. But just the way that we're getting really creative as communities in feeding people and getting people connected to food and to growing, it's just heartwarming. It's just so wonderful. And there's a long way to go, but I don't know. It just feels like there's a bigger collective movement and understanding around this connection between people and food as a right, that I really love to be a part of.
Well, thank you, Chichi, and everyone for sharing those great thoughts. We are right on time, and we're about to wrap up. But I have one more questions to wrap up our Talanoa session. Our discussions for tonight is, what are the most important things you want the audience to remember about food sovereignty? Like anything we mentioned or something that you're thinking about. Again, what are the most important things you want the audience to remember about food sovereignty, in your own opinion? And then we wrap it up for tonight.
I think food sovereignty should be an everybody conversation, because it affects everyone in one way or another. It affects everyone. Either you know somebody, or you will see somebody that needs food, or you will hear of somebody. So it's not it's not just a conversation for those who don't have. It's a conversation for everybody. And I think we must open our minds to the possibility of what we can do to end hunger in this world. And again, teaching our young ones is important. They have to know where their food comes from. And I think even in schools, there should be a class for agriculture and good land practices. It's really, really important. Just like learning to sew and learning to manage your money, you must learn to grow your own food.
Thank you, Amanda.
You're welcome.
Dante, you want to share what are the most important things you want the audience to remember about food sovereignty?
Yeah. I guess the fact that they can get the type of food that they want if we grow it. I remember when I joined a certain organization, they were talking about, we want to teach you how to make compost and then how to do this. So I said, make compost? I am 70 years old, okay? And when I went to school way back then, we were doing agriculture in primary school, what we call the primary school. And we were making compost. And would dig a trench and then put all the things that you put when you're making compost and cover it. After a few months, would transfer that onto beds and grow vegetables. That was when I wasn't even a teenager. So, what Amanda is saying about teaching the children, even some of the grown-ups, they need to know that we can grow food organically, and then you don't need all these pesticides and these artificial fertilizers that messing up the soil. Just to digress a little bit, I know most of the African countries, the soil is dead because they came in and introduced chemical fertilizers when our forefathers didn't use any fertilizers. And now there's nothing that can grow without fertilizer. The soil is dead, there's nothing. So you have to continue to mess up the soil by putting more fertilizers so that you can get food out. So we need to go back to the old ways of farming, the ones that we are trying to do now, growing organically, not messing up the soil anymore, not adding any pesticides and killing all the little creatures that make the soil healthy, so that we can have nice, good food for our health. So that's my take on that. Thank you.
Thank you, Dante. Chichi?
Yeah, I think a lot about this. I think I get these, feelings of like hopelessness, and when it seems like we move out of our sphere and we start talking to people that aren't in this industry, and how little is understood and how many misconceptions there are, and how hard it seems to access for a lot of people. And I think, if I could leave our beautiful audience with anything, it's just that we can't do everything alone. You don't have to take on all of these troubles and try to solve everything on your own. I mean, we have a network of people. We do exist as mycelium, and the things that we do affect other people down the line. We are connected, and the things that we do make a huge difference, for better or for worse, to the people around us in our communities and our future generations. There are a lot of things you can do that are really positive. if, like I said earlier, if you are in any sort of financial position to buy land and then donate it to people, you can put those sorts of things in your will. You can. There are a lot of ways to give back. If you have things like if you have time, connect with a local farmer and donate your time. Help farmers that are organically farming go weed their plots or harvest food or drive things around. Donate time if you have, I don't know, tools or equipment. Um, Donate things. You don't always have to have tons of money to affect
Mhm.
change. You can give your labor, you can give your support, you can show up, you can educate your friends and family and neighbors about I don't know, pesticides or about these issues, food sovereignty, supporting BIPOC, queer, trans markets and makers and farmers, and never stop asking questions. I mean, never stop, following the money, never stop kind of agitating the system because, if we all go quiet, we're all gonna lose together. So we all have to stay pretty. We all have to be little ants biting at the ankle of politicians and capitalism. Um, and grow your own food. Yeah, volunteer, grow your own food. Um, I don't know. It's accessible, and I think that's just what I would hopefully leave people with is, you can do these things, and there's support networks out there, but get involved. And oh man, farmers, they're such beautiful people. They're so much fun. Get involved. There's a lot of fun stuff to do.
Thank you, Chichi. Rosie, if you want to share, what are the most important things you want the audience to remember about food sovereignty? Okay, I think
She can't
Rosie is
hear.
Oh,
having
She can't
some
hear.
who's
some technical issues.
Mhm.
Um, okay, can you hear us now, Rosie? Okay. So we are right on time, and I think this will be the wrap up for our tunnel session. And I would like to say thank you so much to Amanda and also Dancy of Kesama Group, um, and also Chi Chi and Rosie of the Pacific Islanders Community Association. Thank you so much for um, allowing your time to be the panelist for our tunnel session tonight. Thank you so much for sharing your knowledge, your brilliance, and talk more about the work that you do. And thank you so much for still serving our communities and providing our communities with whatever resources that we have. Thank you so much. If you're tuning in, welcome to Utopia Washington tunnel session. For updates, you can join in our social media. Just search for Utopia Washington. And also, you can visit our website, which is utopiawa.org, to updates for our events and more services that we provide. And yeah, and also if you want to volunteers to connect with the land, you can also sign up on our website, or you can shoot us a mail on our social media platforms, or also you can reach out to Amanda and um, Tanti to help with their farm at Horse Neck in Kent. And also, if you also want to volunteer for food pack boxing, you can help out with Rosie. She's doing a marvelous job distributing those food boxes to the communities. I think that it's all from me. And thank you so much for joining in.
Thank you, everyone. This was
Thank
so
you.
much
Have a
fun.
wonderful
Thank you,
day.
Tony.
And
Thank
okay.
you.
Thank you, Utopia.
Ara, that was a great conversation.
A great Talanoa and conversation indeed.
Yes. We'd like to thank our panelists for taking time to have this important conversation and for sharing their brilliance with us.
A special thank you to you, our viewers, for tuning in. We thank you for your support. We hope to see you at our next Talanoa.
Manuia.